Welcome to This Explainer. I'm so excited you're here today because we're looking at something absolutely fascinating and honestly, pretty universal. It's an experience that completely transcends whatever type of machine or animal you happen to be on. We are decoding the rider's high. Whether you're powering down a dirt trail on a mountain bike, carving through a twisty canyon on a motorcycle, or syncing your movements with a horse, there's this profound, almost magical transformation that happens to us when we ride.
So I've got to ask you, why do we love to ride? Like, why are we humans so magnetically drawn to this specific act of balancing, steering, and just moving through space? For a long time, we've just written it off as a casual hobby or maybe just a fun way to get some fresh air. But the science is telling a very different story. As you'll see, it turns out this urge, it's a biological imperative. It is deeply, deeply wired into our nervous system.
Just take a look at this insight from a massive study backed by Harley-Davidson. It says there's a vitality and heightened sensory experience that comes from the freedom of writing. I mean, we all know that feeling, right? That amazing sense of literally leaving your emails in the dust. But what's truly mind-blowing here is that we now have rigorous scientific validation proving that writing doesn't just feel good, it profoundly and fundamentally improves our mental, physical, and even our social health. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. The biology of writing, 2. Hacking the stress response, 3. The science of flow, 4. Neural fertilizer, and finally 5. The power of connection. All right, starting off with section 1, the biology of writing and its evolutionary roots. To really understand why we crave the handlebars or the reins today, we actually have to travel back a couple of million years. You see, our hunter-gatherer ancestors were constantly engaging in these mentally complex and physically demanding tasks, foraging, exploring, tracking. So when we just sit at a desk all day, our bodies get pretty confused. But the moment we start physically exerting ourselves on a ride, a fat hormone called leptin drops. And this drop in leptin signals the brain that, hey, it's time to forage. That gives us a massive urge for physical activity. And when we follow that urge and ride, our brain rewards us with this incredibly potent cocktail of dopamine, endorphins, and serotonin. It's basically an evolutionary leftover that keeps us coming back for more, time and time again. Moving right along to section 2, hacking the stress response. Now, what's really interesting here is that writing isn't just about feeling good in the moment. It actually acts as a direct, active therapy that down-regulates the body's primary stress pathways. Just look at this staggering number. A clinical neurobiological study out of UCLA looked at experienced adult motorcycle riders, and what they found was wild. After just a 20-minute motorcycle ride, these riders experienced a massive 28% drop in cortisol. And cortisol, as you might know, is a primary biomarker of stress. Think about that. Just 20 minutes to cut your stress hormone by almost a third. And when we compare this directly to driving a car, the contrast is honestly stark. You might think driving a car is relaxing, right? But it actually creates high cognitive distraction and does absolutely nothing to buffer stress. On a motorcycle, however, you're constantly having to balance and stabilize. This physical effort increases your heart rate by about 11% and epinephrine by 27%. It perfectly mimics light exercise. So you're getting the cardiovascular arousal of a workout, which actively buffers stress, completely unlike that sterile stationary stress we all hate when sitting in car traffic. And you want to know the best part? The benefits don't just stop the second you park. The data shows that your autonomic nervous system physically resets during your ride. This creates a physiological calming after effect that persists for at least 10 minutes after you dismount. It's literally actively mitigating the daily wear and tear of everyday stressors on your body. Which brings us to section 3, the science of flow. I want you to think about the absolute, calm, hyper-focused mental state it takes to operate one of these vehicles safely. When you're leaning into a sharp curve or navigating a really rocky trail, your brain is just flooded with sensory information. And because our cognitive processing has a hard metabolic limit, the brain has to prioritize the sensory-motor integration. So to do this, it triggers something called transient hypofrontality. Basically, this is the temporary deactivation of your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain responsible for all the overthinking, analytical judgment, and self-criticism. When you ride, your inner critic literally shuts down, which is fantastic news for those of us who overthink everything, right? It plunges you into this intensely focused, perfectly clear flow state. But there is a slight catch to hitting the sweet spot.
You absolutely have to match your challenge to your skill level. If you ride at a moderate, say 7 out of 10 intensity, your subconscious processing takes over. Your body then releases anandamide, which is a natural cannabinoid that essentially triggers that rider's high. But if you push way too hard and get overwhelmed, your body just overproduces adrenaline. And that anxiety literally blocks your feel-good receptors. So, if you want to hack your brain, you've got to find that perfect middle ground of challenge.
All right, let's jump into section 4, neural fertilizer.
Because riding doesn't just temporarily change your brainwaves, guys. It actually fundamentally changes your brain's physical structure. Let me introduce you to BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is a vital protein that scientists often call neural fertilizer. It actively stimulates the formation of new brain cells and strengthens synapses, especially in the hippocampus, which is the area that controls memory and spatial navigation. Some researchers even liken this to a natural Ritalin for cognitive focus, simply because it keeps your brain sharp, growing, and super adaptable.
This data from the Journal of Physiology brilliantly illustrates just how powerful writing is for creating this fertilizer. Get this, just 6 minutes of intense physical cycling triggers a massive 4 to 5-fold spike in BDNF levels compared to resting baselines. Just 6 minutes. To put that into perspective, fasting for 20 hours or doing prolonged low-intensity work doesn't even come close to this kind of neurochemical release. And it's not just your gray matter that benefits, it's your white matter too. Think of white matter as your brain's internal subway system, constantly transmitting information back and forth. Regular riding and the complex motor skills required to balance and navigate actually increases the strength of these white matter fiber tracks. It literally keeps the different parts of your brain effectively connected and communicating smoothly. Let's wrap things up with section 5, the power of connection. So far, we've really been looking at internal brain mechanics, right? But riding also profoundly impacts our external environment and our social health. And a truly beautiful example of this is found in equestrian riding, through something called interspecies autonomic co-regulation. It's fascinating, because a horse naturally has a very low resting heart rate, we're talking around 30 to 40 beats per minute, and a highly resilient nervous system. A stressed human rider's heart rate will actually physically synchronize with the horse. The animal's biological calm literally transfers to the human. It makes a horse arguably the best and definitely the largest therapist you could ever ask for. But hey, even on machines, we find this deep connection. Modern urban design has kind of trapped us in these sterile metal boxes, completely isolating us. Getting outside on a bicycle or a motorcycle acts as green exercise, which physically lowers your blood pressure. And furthermore, riding alongside peer groups, whether that's in a local cycling club or motorcycle group, builds immense social capital. It aggressively combats chronic isolation and provides this shared identity and psychological support that you just can't get sitting all alone in a car. So the crucial point is that this leads to a massive population-level impact. Notice that 15.1% figure right there. A huge longitudinal study out of Scotland found that people who actively cycle commute saw a 15.1% reduction in mental health prescriptions, things like antidepressants and anxiety meds, compared to folks who used other modes of transport. Just moving your body through the world on 2 wheels is an incredibly powerful population-level health intervention. To pull this all together, what the science overwhelmingly proves is this: riding is a deeply unified therapeutic somatic mechanism. Whether you're powered by a motor, by your own pedaling legs, or by a living, breathing horse, riding is a scientifically validated neurobiological intervention. It heals the mind, it strengthens the body, and it deeply connects us to both our community and our environment. So, I want to leave you with a question to ponder today. The next time the modern world has you feeling completely overwhelmed, stressed out, and disconnected, instead of just reaching for a screen, what will you choose to ride? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope you get out there and find your flow.